All right, what's going on YouTube? It's been a while since I posted anything gun related. I had big plans, but the summer kind of fizzled out, and that's already working its way into wintertime. I've had a few questions about my 22 SVD. A couple of questions I want to answer about how I did specific mounting installations. If you're familiar with this, you know that this is a Model 64 Savage 22 long rifle that I squeezed inside a A&K SVD sniper rifle. It's an airsoft, and the parts externally are wood and metal, so it's not a very cheap one, but it's something I'd been working on and planning to do for a while, a few years back, and finally got around to it. But there's a lot of questions that some people want to know about how I got a Model 64 inside and how did I continue with the barrel. Let's go ahead and look at a few of those things. Okay, so this is a Model 64. Um, this one has a 20-inch barrel, which is different than the one I have. I have an 18 or a 16 or an 18-inch barrel on the SVD model. It was a tactical model, and I had to extend the barrel, but let's go ahead and talk about that. So what I did was I was able to squeeze this entire portion. The model I had didn't have a front sight, so that made it a little bit easier. Disassembling the rifle, if you see the triggers are the same, just a little extended. And what I did was, if you look at this, working just like an actual SVD would with the top cover. The top does come off. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Get that vertical. There we go. So we have a metal dust cover on top. And then inside you see the Model 64, how it's mounted inside. We'll talk about this here in a second. If you look inside, I used some mounting screws to put pressure on the top that would keep the rifle aligned inside. The barrel here goes through a bushing that was made inside here using some of the original parts from the rifle itself, the air rifle, to allow it to line up the barrel assembly and through the forearm. Let's get this out of the way. This is an actual 7.62 by 5.4R casing. And the reason I did that is because the charging handle on the Model 64, as you even see here, it's relatively small. It doesn't stick out very far. And so what I did was I threaded a screw, tapped it in, and epoxied this in. It just gives me something to pull charge. You know, it's purely just functional. It's not cosmetic or, keeping with an actual SVD, but it's just something that I had available, and I was like, yeah, that'd be a kind of a cool idea. In other words, making a custom one, I'm not a machinist, so this works just fine for me. The trigger assembly is in the same spot. I do have a mounting screw that I did have to tap and thread into a portion inside the rifle, which will hold it in. And besides that, everything else kind of fits in there, snug-wise. If I wanted to disassemble it, it would just take a few minutes, disassembling the rifle normally, removing a few screws. Put a little thread lock in here because they will work their way out. This is just a platform. These two screws right here are just a platform for the rifle to sit onto as the pressure from the front is forcing its way downward. So it takes a little of adjustment. There's nothing permanent. I didn't have to really modify the rifle at all except tapping in a screw from underneath. Let's turn the rifle over and or turn it around and look at the magazine right here. The magazine, let's start off with that. The magazine is nothing more than a hollowed out airsoft magazine. Take the innards out. You do need to clip a few things off. We'll show you the comparison, these little tabs, and do a little bit of modification. And of course, inside is just a regular rifle magazine. And I'll show you how I mounted that. I believe in the early video I showed a few years ago, I just had a regular magazine sticking out the bottom. I had not yet modified that magazine. The SVD release right here is totally useless because it would not function properly at all. So what I did was I modified the magazine release from the 62 model with a little threaded Allen head key. So all I have to do is push forward, See this little lever right here, and then the magazine will fall out. Basically all I did was threaded a piece right in here and screwed another piece. It's just a cleaning kit, brass portion, and then an Allen head screw, if you could see that right there. And all it is just allows me, instead of using the thumb, it allows me to use the exterior. And that's what that little cutout portion on the magazine here is. Yeah, it's gritty. If you look inside, you're going to see some epoxy resin. I taped the magazine shut, and I also tapped on the bottom a little screw that would be able to catch the epoxy so it wouldn't be able to slide up or break free. So it is mounted in there pretty securely. All I did was mount the magazine that was taped up. Let's see, mounted it in, and used the blank one that was modified, cut out. I inserted it in how as it would properly align. And then before I did that, I poured epoxy inside there, just regular, body filler epoxy. And then I positioned it and just mounted it where it would go perfectly, and then let it harden. And after that, you could just drop the magazine. But other than that, you can use regular, M62 magazines. But this gives it the full look. That's all I did with that. And this does slide right in. And, from the other side, you could tell it didn't look like it looked like a regular magazine. Now, the furniture is actual wood. I think this was on an airsoft site called Evike. I think at the time I got the whole setup for $40. It wasn't too bad. It replaced the poly, the poly plastic setup that was all black. Gives it just a little bit better look. Same thing with the handguard. The barrel runs through to this point right here on the gas block. I'm doing a one-handed video. This is the actual barrel. The barrel terminates right about here. It's threaded, so all I had to do was take the barrel from the existing airsoft rifle, cut it, it's relatively soft metal, and then thread it, so it is hidden behind the gas block. So the transition, it looks pretty good. The barrel is exactly the same diameter as the airsoft. And then all I did was mount the, this has a series of screws underneath where you could take off the front flash device, the muzzle device, and front sight, and you can just go ahead and mount that on. Now, the 22 round does travel from this point through a 3/8 inch opening till it exits the barrel. So it's pretty clear. I checked it numerous times with rods, laser bore sights, whatever I could come up with to make sure that it wasn't going to strike the insides, and it worked out pretty well. I'm pretty sure in here it's just caked with carbon, but running a little brush in here might, would clean it out. You got a little bit of carbon buildup. But and the way I weathered it, if you see, it's kind of weathered. It was just Scotch Brite, not steel wool, just some Scotch Brite, and I just polished it, where all the natural wears would be. Other than that, I put just put a cheap bipod on it, and the top cover, which fits right back on. Let's go ahead and put that on there. I would like to say easily, but nothing ever does when you're filming. And then you lock it on as it would be. So it's not very difficult. It's just a matter of being creative and getting it in there. You can put an optic on here. I did have an optic on here at one point, but it's just an optics rail. It's not a PSO type scope or anything like that. I'd like to get something, but I'm not going to invest a lot of money unless I can get one for around $100. So most likely an airsoft version, and it'll just give it that overall look. But I hope that answers a lot of your questions. If you have any curiosities about it, let me know. But it's pretty simple. It was a fun build. I did this a few years ago, and I do occasionally take it out, put a scope on it, and do some target shooting. My son loves it just because of the look. A lot of kids, they like checking it out because they think it's real until I shoot it, and it's relatively, soft shooting rifle. But there we go. So that's how I modified the magazine and the inside. It's just a matter of being creative. Everything else lined up pretty good. Remember, the magazine will not work. The magazine release will not work, so you have to modify that. That's the only way to get that magazine to come out. And you got to make that little little part right there. You got to tap in. So you do have to modify the rifle some, but nothing permanent, that, you couldn't, all I got to do is take this out and it's back to normal. It's just a small hole, drilled in one side. It's not even all the way through. Other than that, I hope, that answers some of your questions. All right. Thanks for watching.